So, something cool happened in a not so cool way. I need to bring the camera with me. As you can see, the neighborhood is still all kinds of tore up with the storms. We just now got everything out of the backyard and burnt, maybe an hour ago. So I finally did it. I went and bought the Mathews lift 29.5. The only thing that makes this a little less fun is why I actually ended up pulling the trigger on this. I've not done a whole bunch of shooting with this thing. I got it shooting bullets at the shop. I've shot maybe 15 arrows yesterday. Man, that 80 pounds is to jump from 75. But I'll tell you, this thing is pretty sweet. So the reason I keep saying that it's bittersweet that I picked this bow up is because of what happened to my V3X. I've been shooting the V3X since it came out years ago and love that bow. I didn't have a plan to replace it. No, 2 days ago, I went into the bow shop with a frayed cable less than a week before I leave for a hunt. Look at this crap. Bro. What? And I have a hunt coming up in a week. So I need to get my bow setup dialed in and ready to go with broadheads, and I need everything to be working right. So I take my V3X in for a new cable. It was my bottom cable and got that replaced. Got that, you know, shooting bullets again, making sure everything worked okay. I come home and I get maybe 50 arrows deep, and I'm thinking that I'm gonna shoot 50 arrows, put a couple twists in the string, if it's stretched any, make sure everything is right back into spec. But I get maybe 50 arrows deep, I draw back, and before I even release the arrow, the bow explodes. What happened is the top cable that I didn't replace just blew up right in the yokes. But I'm guessing that there was another fray that I never saw. So I went back to the bow shop for a second time that day, and with how beat up my cams and all my bearings, how beat up everything was from years of shooting that bow every day, I just decided it was time for a switch. Gosh, this thing is sick. So I've got new arrows on the way that I plan on hunting with. So I'm not shooting past 20 yards right now, just because this isn't the arrow setup I'm using. I don't want to set up a sight tape for it or chuck a bunch of arrows into the cornfields trying to shoot further than 20 yards. So one of the first things I notice from a first impression standpoint, of course it's harder to, it's hard to compare apples to apples because my V3X was 75 pounds and I'm shooting 80 pounds on the lift. But the draw cycle is definitely more aggressive. This bow at 80 is shooting a lot faster than my old setup. My old setup was just under 290 feet per second with a 447 grain arrow. With that same arrow, I'm getting like 309 feet a second out of this bow. So a pretty substantial jump, but on that draw cycle, what I really feel is right where that cam starts to rock into its last position, right there. I'm trying to ride it for you guys. Right in that area, it's pretty stiff. You really have to get it down into that valley, which I personally don't mind. On a hunting bow, I do care about performance more than I do comfort, and that's just a personal thing. So guys, I cannot say enough about how helpful it is as a bow hunter to practice at longer ranges. Going into last year's season, me and my wife both, we did a lot of practicing, you know, at 20, 30, 35 yards, because that's the most common shots that you're going to take on an animal. But the added challenge of shooting at further distance, I start every day at 50 plus yards. The added challenge of shooting out that far consistently means that 20 and 30 yard shots feel just too easy to mess up. All 12s here at 20 yards with the bow that's not even sighted in. For me, I spend most of my time between 50 and 80 yards. Even though I wouldn't necessarily be happy to take a shot that far, if I have to, I can, and anything closer than that is too easy to mess up. So I want to be very clear that this video is not a review. I've had this bow for 2 days and put less than 20 arrows through it. I will plan on dropping a longer, more in-depth review once I've got to learn this bow a little bit. But my first impressions of this bow is I'm very impressed. I will preface that I don't have a wide variety of experience with different types of bows from different manufacturers. My experience is shooting a Diamond Edge back when I first started bow hunting. 2 years ago now, I bought a V3X 33, and for my draw length at 28.5, that ended up being just a little bit long. The string angle is a little more comfortable for me at the 29-inch bows. So I traded that bow for a V3X 29. And I've been shooting that V3X 29 for about 2 years straight. I've shot Hoyts, I've shot PSEs, so I've tried a couple of those other bows, but I've always gravitated back towards the Mathews. The first impressions I have of these bow is that it's really fast. Something that really took me off guard is how quiet this bow is. When shooting my V3X, with the same accessories that I got on this bow, what I would notice is the sound, well, not loud, it's a quiet bow. What I would hear in my V3X is more of a kung, kung, where it's a little bit more drawn out sound. This sound feels snappy and quiet, where the bow signature is not a kung, but a and I don't know if that's the quad limb system. I don't know if it's a better design on the riser itself, but this bow is silent and it is just crazy fast. What I will say is I didn't think I would notice much of a difference coming from a 29-inch bow to the 29.5. I think a big part of it is because how long the riser is compared to the axle. They've got the longest riser on this thing possible, to where those bow limbs are practically parallel riser to axle. This thing holds really steady. So it holds steady like a longer bow, like the V3X 33 that I had, but it's got the same speed and string angle that I prefer on these 29-inch bows. Something that I always struggle with the 3D targets is, especially on antelope and deer, some of those lighter animals that don't have such crazy shoulder bones, is I really want to shoot them in a different place than where they have the 12 rings. I know a lot of you feel my pain. I'll shoot the 12 ring on the elk because I think mid-body, backside of the shoulder is a pretty good spot to hit an animal with such large lungs and bones. But with the setup that I have, the front shoulder of a small animal like a whitetail or antelope's not that big of a deal. That's been kind of a debate between me and the wife. I like shooting them for score because it's more tangible on if I hit 12s today or if I don't. but my wife feels the most confident shooting them where she would shoot the actual animal. And I think there's not really a wrong answer. Let me know what you think. Drop it in the comments. Hopefully you can hear just how quiet this thing is. I didn't think it'd be so tangible to a human ear, but gosh, it's just so much different. If my V3X wasn't in pieces right now, I'd compare them. I'll do a sound test once I get that bow back together. I think that's really the gist of my first impressions of the lift. I'll tell you, I love it. I'm glad it comes in Bottomland. I've never worn Mossy Oak. I've never had any of their products, but the Bottomland camo on here is sweet. It actually matches the, or it's very similar to the spray paint job that I put on my V3X. It feels like home. I'm loving the lift. I'm really happy that it's an 80-pound bow because I've been itching towards an 80-pound bow for a little while. I actually was tempted to buy the PSE Levitate to get to 80 pounds last year. I'm really excited to see how the match strings hold up because it was no fun on the older bows to drop $1,200 on a bow and immediately go spend $150 on strings. I'm hoping that these match strings are the end of that. Guys, if you appreciated the video, go ahead and drop a like and subscribe to the channel. Your support means a lot. Of course, any questions that you have as I'm tinkering with this thing, go ahead and leave them in the comments or message me on Instagram. I know that was a really brief overview, but I'll be back with you with more information before you guys know it.